You want to kick it off?
I can kick it off. It says we're live. What's going on, folks?
Yo.
Me and Magic Will Middleton, we're here with you guys for another pre-sales call. You know what? I don't even see anybody in here yet, but hopefully someone's going to see us online live and they're going to join the stream, ask us questions. Folks, with the pre-sales call, we're here to help with anything that's related to LifterLMS or sometimes WordPress in general. If we have the knowledge to help, we will. But feel free to ask us questions, add your comments. We'll see them here and respond with you. Also, want to point out, just join the call, get involved, interact with us, let us know where you're calling from, and just say hello. That'd be awesome to see some folks chiming in. Will, how you doing today, man?
Absolutely. I'm doing well. I got a little video published, so I'm excited about that. Finally getting the content production wagon going again.
Nice.
Excited about that. And also, I have to go to Home Depot or Menards or something and get some more driveway coating because I used 3 buckets and it wasn't enough. So I got
3 buckets. Dude, how big is your driveway?
It's not too big. It's maybe like 30 feet by 30 feet.
How big are the holes in your driveway?
Oh, there's not like a huge hole. I went through and did the crack sealer stuff, and then I've been using the big rubber tool to like lay out the coating.
Sweet.
And I might need to get another one because it probably dried up.
Well, as you know, I'm getting ready to move. So I got up today at the butt crack of dawn and I skipped our scrum call on LifterLMS so I could scrub the grout in between all of the tiles on the entire ground floor of my house so that our grout looks white instead of black, brown, nasty. So getting the place ready to vacate, man.
Nice.
So my sinuses are all burnt up with bleach. Owie kapowie.
Oh, yeah, that's not a good feeling.
No. And I do see some comments coming in, but unfortunately, they're still from you at this point.
Yeah, these are some comments we had since our last call, which was, does LifterLMS build your website, or do I have to have a WordPress site and an account and then add the LifterLMS plugin? So LifterLMS is a plugin, so you would have your own WordPress set up on your own hosting, and you'd install the plugin. Lifter doesn't offer website building services, and we don't have an AI tool yet to build your website for you, so that's something that you still have to facilitate as the site owner.
You know what? I want to expand on that.
Yeah.
In today's marketplace, working in WordPress, it is nothing like what it was half a decade ago, right? So you and I have both done this exercise before. We don't need to do it again today, Will. But it's like, if we're being very realistic, you can pop in a brand new fresh WordPress startup site, either through Cadence or through Astra or through any other, premium plugin, premium whatever that has a starter site. I like Astra. You've been a big fan of Cadence, but those starter sites, boom, you've got a website. Now all you have to do is change your text and your images to suit your use case. And then if we're being honest, because now I can't remember how long we've been doing it, but we've been doing it at least 2 years, right? Where through the installation wizard, you can install those sample courses, right? So if you think about it, there's no way that LifterLMS would be able to know what type of membership system you want to have or how much you want to charge for your memberships. So we don't pre-populate the membership area, and we don't really get into like your pricing and your payment gateways as a pre-setup because you have to add your accounts to that. But it's like, do I have to make a WordPress site from scratch? If that's the question, the answer is really no, because you throw in Cadence or Astra and you've got a starter site that you can choose. And then when you go through the installation wizard with Lifter, you're going to have sample learning content. And then you're just into a situation where you're going to change the text and the images to suit your use case and get yourself launched. And for a minimal viable product, sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah. Absolutely. And there was a follow-up question. This is the same person asking, does it matter where you host your WordPress website like GoDaddy? That's a really important question. Let me get our recommended resources up.
Dun, dun, dun.
Resources. So yeah, hosting your WordPress site is super important choice as to where you decide to host your site. We have our recommended hosting. It's actually right there at the top. So I'll post that in chat and highlight it. Recommended resources. This is the LifterLMS.com/recommended resources is where we host our recommended hosts. And these are hosts that our users have had maybe like the least issues with or the least reported issues and seem to be the best for hosting an LMS site currently. And there are some important considerations when hosting a website. If you Google LifterLMS hosting, you'll find our guide that breaks down like a super intensive document about what is important with a website host and supporting dynamic content and all this stuff, because a LifterLMS website is not like a traditional website. Like usually we find websites that website hosts like I don't know, like HostGator or GoDaddy or even like a Bluehost, they offer like a bunch of other hosts. You can find like a budget hosting option that's usually like a shared host, and these hosts are usually optimized for like Web 1 and basic Web 2 functionality, which would be like displaying content. If you're a restaurant or a blog, like we want to serve content to the end user, and then sometimes they'll have a contact form. That's like the integration of Web 2 is where the user can even submit things to your website. They'll have comments, they'll have contact forms where the user on their end is also typing into your website. So that's like Web 2 stuff. And so really kind of basic interactions are supported with like shared website hosts that are heavily optimized and heavily cached and all this kind of stuff. And so with LifterLMS websites or WooCommerce websites or any kind of e-commerce, or membership, you have like logins and purchases and more and quizzes going on. You have more advanced functionality being integrated into the website. And so you want to have a website host that supports the dynamic content like that, where if a student is logged in or logged out, the course page is going to look different, because if they're logged out, they might get redirected to a sales page, or if they're logged in, they should see the content. There's like more dynamic stuff going on with the website that's important to take into consideration, and the website hosts on our recommended resources page support that pretty well.
You know, when it comes to hosting, there's a lot of other things to consider. And I don't want to go all the way down this rabbit hole because we could get lost here for the whole hour, Will. But do some due diligence. Look at some reviews. I don't want to give out all of my opinions here on this call because we just don't want to do that. But, you know, how free are you to move from one host to another? Part of the love of WordPress is the freedom of WordPress, the flexibility of WordPress. And so if I have all of my stuff, I will say Cloudways out loud. Like, so if I have my stuff on Cloudways and I want to move it somewhere else, I mean, it's literally like put in the CPP code, migrate the site. Like it's, you want to be able to have that kind of freedom to do what you want as your project expands. You don't want to get stuck into a host where it's like, well, we're going to hold on to your site for the next 5 or 6 days and wait till it go through the migration process and all these kinds of things that, you know, with registrars and URLs and domains and things like that. So do the due diligence and find yourself something that for your budget matches what you think your future wants or demands might fit. Which if you're just getting started, sometimes that advice is convoluted and confusing. But once you've been around for a little bit, you'll start to understand how important making that hosting decision is. And the difference between $3 or $4 a month versus $20 a month is huge in what is delivered to you on the other end.
Right. And also, does your website host support WordPress or not in a dedicated way? Like,
yeah. A WordPress managed host is huge. And there's some that have like really, really cool add-in packages. You know, I just did the show with WP Tonic this morning, which ironically had Jason Coleman on as a guest. So that was interesting, right? Because I work with both WP Tonic and LifterLMS. And so the owners of both are in that show. But, you know, think about what WP Tonic offers. They offer, you know, different plugins and hosting and with their situation, but you could be in for $55 a month if you sign up for that. They have different budgetary, buy-ins, right? But if you think about it, like I just said, hosting for $20 a month is awesome, right? But then if you want hosting plus access to plugins, plus access to additional support, plus access to some training and coaching, well, then you might want to go into something that's more inclusive, but then you're looking at $55, $60, $75 a month, depending on what you want to sign up for.
Absolutely. And we did have a question come in from Frederick. I need assistance creating a TX insurance pre-licensing course for the Texas Department of Insurance approval to start my business. Do you assist with creating the course content? At Lifter, we don't assist with creating the instructional design content itself. Lifter focuses more on the technology integration with WordPress and turning a WordPress website into a website that supports functionality like courses, enrollments, memberships, quizzes, engagements, certificates, all that kind of stuff. So we're really focused on the technical end of that. And then Kurt put a link here in chat for like the pre-vetted LifterLMS experts, which if you go to that list, there's a good number of people who have instructional design as their the service they offer. And so connecting with someone who's good at instructional design is really useful for putting together course material. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about that, Kurt. You do a lot of work in instructional design.
I do. And that's one of those things where you really need to, as the client, you need to know what you want before you go shopping, or what your appetite is or what your budget is before you go shopping. For instance, a lot of the instructional design that I do is with people that have mechanical consumer-oriented products, right? And so what I do, if you take a look at like what I did for Suzuki sent the product over. My team would take apart the motorcycle, take all the images, the photos, the how-to, from the mechanical side of how to do the repairs, put everything together and make that happen. I did a similar thing with Ducati. I've also done stuff for like what they call fixed operations, which is not so much taking mechanical things apart, but understanding policies and processes for a company, and then putting those policies and processes to a series of screen shared and coaching lessons to put out a product where, say, a service writer or service manager could optimize the parts and labor sold through a department. So that's a little different. When you get into something like the Texas Insurance All Lines pre-licensing course, you're going to want to make sure that you have a subject matter expert that is available for the instructional designer to make sure that all of the content or required content gets into your course. And that's one of the hardest things. A lot of times you'll have, maybe you're the subject matter expert, like Frederick, maybe you're the guy that knows this thing inside and out. Well, if that's the case, you would be the subject matter expert, and then you would probably consult with an instructional designer that helps you break down those areas of knowledge into kind of an outline. That outline becomes the curriculum, and then you can expand the elements of that curriculum to fit a proper lesson course structure. And I find everyone's got a different appetite, but I have been finding most recently that micro learning is the way to go. So more lessons in shorter spans seems to have a higher retention rate for information than less lessons with a expanded content for each lesson. I probably went too deep.
Oh, no problem. Another good resource for instructional design currently is like the AI tools. That's a great way to like take your subject matter expertise and get like a general outline. If you don't want to go through the whole basic or the whole process of hiring an instructional designer and going through the process like that, or you're maybe at the start of a business or validating a business, of course an instructional designer is going to do better than an AI tool because they understand more of the intention and experience and stuff like that. But you could just type your subject matter into an AI tool like ChatGPT is a popular one we see, where you could type out help me write up a 400 word lesson or a 300 word lesson or whatever on this topic, and then you expand upon your knowledge on that topic, and it'll give you something back that's probably usable. Then you can edit it, of course, but that's like a instructional designer light.
Yeah, I actually had a client that hired an instructional designer from Fiverr. it caught me off guard because I didn't know that that's what they were doing, right? But it got to got near the end of the project. They were overdue to give me their course content, and I was like, you need to have this course content if we're going to launch this website. Like, it's the whole reason we built the website. And they finally got me the course content, but it came as a Word document. And then literally, as I was copying and pasting the content into the website, I noticed that everything was getting flagged for grammatical and spelling errors like crazy. And then I ended up having to go through and like kind of like proofread and edit this thing down. And that wasn't part of what the client had hired me to do, right? But my name's on the project, so I don't want to put out a pile of crud either. You got to be really, really careful where you're sourcing your stuff from. This is not to say that Fiverr sucks. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is you've got to vet the people that you are bringing into your circle for your project. And that's why I pointed out to the experts list on LifterLMS, because those people are kind of like pre-vetted. They've done work with Lifter before. We haven't had many complaints from people. We want to make sure that we're giving you the best opportunity to put your best foot forward. And so starting out with a pre-vetted list is a really good way to go.
Absolutely. We have another question here. Best suggestion for hosting audio files and making them a part of the courses and lessons. I'd like to make sure the studio or the audio files are downloadable and some way to protect them against sharing. So, yeah, with hosting audio files and making them downloadable, I can't remember if Bunny.net also hosts audio files, but usually I think like SoundCloud is the one that we hear people use. I've never even stored an audio course. Private files. Kurt, have you ever worked with a course that includes audio as like a media format?
So the biggest question here is, what are the size of the audio files, right? Because we can put MP3s at a decent file size directly into the media library and embed those directly into our content, and then it becomes self-hosted. You can disable right-clicking, right? So you can probably stop half of the people trying to download your stuff and secure it. So there's those options. But what I find is a lot of people that ask this question, it really comes down to like, well, I've made an audio book, it's a 9-hour audio file, and they want to throw that somewhere and call it secure. And realistically, that just doesn't happen unless you start employing things like SoundCloud or Audible if it's a book, things like that. So it really comes down to use case on where I recommend my clients put their stuff.
Right.
It just depends on what it is. So if it's a 30-second sound clip, there's nothing wrong with putting that into your website and then linking that to a lesson or a course. But again, if it's a giant audio file, with sound effects, or a full-blown podcast like what we do, like even these support calls, I wouldn't take the audio from this and put that directly into a site. I would probably put it into a podcast type of broadcast system and then embed the podcast file.
Mm-hmm. Right. There was it Castos? There was one of those providers.
Castos puts the podcast material directly in the back of your website, kind of like what Presto Player does with video.
Okay, nice. Yeah, I heard that one that like allows you to secure stuff. Like the idea is like private podcasting. So if you look into private podcasting, that's usually where you'll find the best tools for storing audio in a restricted course environment. In WordPress out of the box, the embed feature where you'd usually use the LifterLMS audio embed feature will support SoundCloud, Spotify, Reverb Nation, and Mixcloud. Those are the ones that WordPress usually works with out of the box, but you can embed anything in WordPress that could work on a page or a post inside of Lifter. So really that idea is like, what's the best way to secure the audio content? And I think private podcasting solutions are probably going to be the best. I thought even MP3 audio files way down the site, longer than 30-minute audio. Yeah, so MP3 files will definitely weigh down the site. They're usually like if your files are probably less than 20 megabytes or something, you probably wouldn't be such a bad user experience, especially if you're putting it on a separate page. It's not the lesson page. But yeah, the best practice is to offload the media that's that large. And Frederick said, got it. Thank you both. That's our previous question. Yeah, the 30-minute audio files. I would recommend checking out like Castos that would probably be the first place I would go. Private files. Create a private podcast with Castos. We did a podcast episode with them.
Yeah.
So this might be something to check out. I'll post the link here on YouTube. Create private podcast, and then this can be embedded in your lessons and stuff. Settings, or you could even I've seen people turn the audio files into video files and then store them on a video host where like you just would have like a picture on screen, and then it's like the audio behind it, and then there's a lot more support for video hosts. There's not like a great audio host or like a industry leading audio host I've seen, since most of the audio stuff is pretty public or just privately hosted, because you could have like a dedicated host, like a website host that supports audio files, and then like use like some kind of a video embedder, or not a video embedder, like a HTML5 embedder that's customized by a developer to embed an audio file that's custom hosted or self-hosted. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when it comes to personal recommendations, you'll notice that sometimes Will and I hesitate. And here's the hesitation. Like, just because I use something personally doesn't mean that it's going to last forever or that it's the best thing ever. Like, I personally use Adillo video hosting, and Adillo also handles audio files. And so I've got the link right here. But I want to be like clear, like Adillo to me is not YouTube. It's not Vimeo. It's not Wistia. It's not one of those premium brands that is like, has this market penetration that like, so I know it's going to last forever and it's never going to have a problem. Right. I personally use Adillo because back when Facebook and stuff was going crazy with all the censoring nonsense, I was like, I need a place to put my stuff where it's not going to disappear, especially if I'm putting it into lessons and courses. And so that's why I signed up for Adillo, and I got it on a crazy lifetime access plan. It was like $170, unlimited videos for life or something like that. That was through AppSumo. And so sometimes AppSumo has a great deal, and sometimes you sign up for something and a year later it's gone. But I've been on Adillo for 2 years, and it's worked really, really well for me. I'm happy with it, and I started to see a lot of their direct pay-per-click advertising show up in a lot of other social feeds. So it tells me that it's more consistent and more constant than maybe when I first signed up for it. I will tell you, as a personal user of the product, I've been really happy with it. But again, that is not a LifterLMS recommendation. That is a personal Kurt uses it recommendation. But it is a good place to throw video and audio, and then be able to embed that directly into your website using their embed codes.
Right. And I have a video host that I use for my online course. I don't even remember what it's called. It's not Vimeo or Wistia. I have no clue.
You're like, I can't even find it if I wanted to.
Yeah, I don't. Like, if I log into the website, I could look at the URL and figure it out. But I don't remember. It was on the LifterLMS podcast, and they had a good deal going. So, like 5 years ago, I bought it, and then just haven't updated it since. Video hosting is like, and that's one of those things people think about a lot with their online course site is like, is a big deal. Is like, where am I going to host my courses? And I think it's to some degree a little bit arbitrary of like, that's not the biggest thing that's going to be the success or failure of the course site. But if you're, particularly interested in optimizing it, then it's good to choose a good host like that. Put some effort into the decision there.
It's so interesting to me because when I first started, I would throw stuff on YouTube and not even think about it. Like, because YouTube is just this giant open library of stuff. It's not really curated, right? It's just out there. And then the benefit of me having stuff organized in my course and lesson structure was that, I was curating that list in an order for people for a learning environment, right? So when someone pays me $50 for a course, even if those videos are available on YouTube, the way I present the course and the supporting graphics and text and layout and the way that you have your user interface, the user experience put into your site, that's what generates that value, right? At least to me. And sure, you could use the unlisted feature, but YouTube gets grumpy if you list everything as unlisted and then you sell it on your website, right? So that's one of those things. And so people were forced into this Vimeo experience. Well, Vimeo's fantastic. Vimeo's awesome, but you got to make sure that your monetization schedule through your project creates enough revenue so that when you go over a certain bandwidth or over a certain usage in Vimeo, your project can stomach the upcoming fees. Because once you get over a certain usage in Vimeo, all of a sudden you get a giant bill from Vimeo that says, hey, your usage went over this much, and now instead of being at this tier, you're now at this tier for billing, right? So you want to be ready for that. And that's one of the things I didn't want to stomach, because a lot of my projects don't generate a ton of revenue. A lot of my projects are just like passion projects. And so that's why I put those into Adillo, because that is a cost capped adventure for me.
Right. We'll dive into Vimeo pricing in a minute. But Leanne asked another question. I didn't know audio. Adillo does audio well. I checked out last night. I mentioned it yesterday's mention. Oh yeah. Yeah. I think that it's a good one to check out. We just haven't built any specific integrations or anything, but it's with WordPress and with just creating an online course site that's by your own design, you can add a bunch of tools to it that, since Lifter and Adillo don't have like an official business relationship or any official integration, it doesn't mean that the setup won't work. Like there's a Zoom tool, like embedding Zoom in WordPress, that you can use with LifterLMS that Kurt has a video about on YouTube, and it's like there's nothing official about that, but it works for embedding your Zoom into WordPress, and if you wanted to have Zoom in your Lifter lessons, it's a good way to do that.
Yeah. And on the Zoom front, because Zoom has changed so many things in the 2024 season, a lot of folks are bailing off the Zoom idea and running into other projects. And there's tons of things out there now, like Whereby. I put Whereby into a couple of different sites, and it's cool because the whole sign in and user interface is contained in the page that you embed it on. Like, it's just cool the way that it works, right? So when you have a Zoom integration on your website, you're actually putting like the whole Zoom, schedule a meeting, host a meeting, meeting codes, all of that stuff goes in the back of your dashboard. And then you embed the short code into wherever you want it on your website, and people can enter the meeting by going to that short code, and it's like right there. But when you use like Whereby or Jitsy's another one. When you use Whereby or Jitsi, it's kind of like that whole meeting user experience just happens on the page, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's I've never worked with embedding a meeting in WordPress. It's more of something I'll link out to a Zoom or link out to a Google Meet or something like that.
Yeah, I keep on my Mañana No Mas site, I keep a page open all the time to host a meeting in. And so like if I have a client that's like, if it's like a last minute thing and a client says, oh, I want to get together and blah, blah, blah. Like instead of opening up a Zoom room, I'll just say, I'll go to this link real quick. And that is, I'll share that screen actually. Share. And so that's this page right here. And literally I can just say join meeting. And because it's web-based, it doesn't conflict with the camera that's on, that we're using right now for StreamYard.
Yeah.
And I can change cameras. I can add people to the meeting. As you see here, I can change the camera. I can change the background effect, my video settings, my microphone, my audio. I can share the screen. People can, put in their gestures just like in Zoom. You can do chat. You can do breakout groups, and then obviously leave the room. And then you can change. A lot of people were like, well, how do I change, where I see the I don't know if you can see that. Do you see the pop-out screen where I'm down at the bottom right?
I don't see any pop-out at the bottom right. We just see it grow.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd see that. All right. Anyway, when I click on this, it gives me a pop-out screen so I can see the meeting but still go to other tabs in my website, which I really like. I like that feature quite a bit. And then I'll just go ahead and close this out. But that is the Whereby feature. And so Whereby is free. Like, unless you want to record your meetings, let me get out of there. Let me stop my screen share. Unless you want to record your meetings or stream your meetings, the feature is free, and you can just put that right into your website. I really enjoy it. I think for $10 a month, I can record my meetings and I can stream to one channel. It'd be cool if you could stream to your StreamYard. if StreamYard was your one channel, you'd be set, because then you'd go to all your other channels.
Right. They have some good graphics on their website. Like this.
And it's kind of this open source project that has a ton of API information and a bunch of other things that you can do with it. And I, just being honest, I don't have the brain capacity right now to try and figure out someone else's code or all these other ways that I could use it. So I literally just give them $10 a month so that I can record some meetings if I need to. And that's that. Jitsi was another one, JITSY. They've got a really interesting program. That's another browser-based video hosting solution that you can put into your website. But they also have an option to self-host the platform, which gives you a little more flexibility and freedom with how you use it. But then you have to have a video host. Like, it's not a WordPress-based thing, right? So now you've complicated things for yourself, unless you really want to dive in deep.
Yeah, I think that has to do with like the stage of the business. Like, are we at the 0 to 10 customer mark, or like the 10 to 100 or 100 up?
Yeah.
You mentioned Vimeo scaling and pricing can become like an issue, and if like Vimeo scaling and pricing becomes an issue, it means that like we're not making enough profit per user, or we're not, like, there's a bigger company issue as to like metrics we're not tracking as to like costs per user. But that's a good problem to have, because it means that it's like growing pains to have to figure out metrics like that and then start to track things. Because pricing usually wouldn't become a problem until you have like 200 students at least. I'd imagine, like, I don't know, like you'd have like 1 student or 10 students or 100 students watching so much video that it becomes a problem. Yeah, I don't know. Once you have the problem of Vimeo's pricing scaling, you have some much larger opportunities for growth. And so it's just taking a look at the business at a bigger picture.
Yeah. And again, use case is so important when you have these conversations, because maybe you're a nonprofit and you're just trying to help some disadvantaged kids, and you're giving them free access to some stuff that's a passion project, right? And you don't think much about it. Then all of a sudden, some newspaper picks you up, right? Or you end up on Fox News or CNN or something. And next thing you know, you got 1.6 million people signing into your website to try and check something out. And then, all of a sudden you get a $6,000 video hosting bill from Vimeo. And then you realize, that your mail list went from 10,000 to 80,000. And you're going, well, these are all the things I wanted to have happen. I have no idea how I'm going to pay for it. Like, that's when your model doesn't match, the use case, right? And so it's one of those things where when you're building your project, you want to be cognizant of what's your model, how you're going to generate revenue off of it. As generous as everybody wants to be, there's got to be a way to pay the bills at the end of the month. And so you just got to kind of figure it all out, and look for those gems. Like, find a CRM tool that caps its expense at a certain dollar amount. Look for a video host that caps its expense for you. And then that way, even if you're paying a little bit more up front, on the back end, if this thing were to suddenly blossom and you don't have a real revenue model for it, you wouldn't be dead on arrival.
Right.
I, of course, like the revenue models. I like selling things and making money, but some people are into passion projects too. And so you just want to know what those passion projects might do to you down the road if they suddenly grow and expand.
Yeah. And I think like fundamentally keeping the business as simple as possible when you don't know where you're going to expand or what direction you're going to expand into is really, really like important. So that's one of the bigger pieces of like not having too many WordPress plugins is like, it might not be a big deal when you're starting your website as to like, what do you have, 60 plugins or 15 plugins? It doesn't really matter if you only have like 5 customers in your website, because you can have like this Frankenstein's monster and get it to work. But then as you scale, you'll run into like more issues with like compatibility, because they're like, each plugin is loading a bunch of files onto the end user or modifying files that are being loaded. And so with so many modifications of these files being loaded, the server starts to get weighed down with traffic and requests for lessons and quizzes, and your lesson page is built in Elementor, but it's using a template from a different plugin. Like you start to run into like these kind of performance issues at scale. And so that's why like keeping it simple and minimalistic is like a general like simple rule or best practice with the products you use. It really depends on how much energy you want to save later in the process, and at what stage of the business are you at currently, like validating or scaling. Where are you at with that?
I kind of got stuck on that idea now. Are there any tools that are a go-to for you, Will, that aren't mainstream? Like I mentioned Adillo, right? What kind of tools do you have in your, like, what arrows are in your quiver that are like go-to tools for you but aren't mainstream?
I guess like the tangible LifterLMS plugin was not really mainstream, but it was like a good LifterLMS Elementor integration. And now I'm using the block editor more and more, so I'm trying to lean into my projects to just the WordPress out of the box and not even use Elementor. I'm trying to think of other non-mainstream tools that I used. I guess the user switching plugin I don't think would be considered mainstream. Where
that's a big one.
It's a free plugin you can find on the WordPress repository that allows you to switch users. So you can say, have a student on your website, go to your user list and click switch to, and switch to that student. So when a student says, I'm having an issue accessing something, you can switch to their account and see exactly what they're seeing. That's a really great plugin. I don't think that one's mainstream. What else?
Yeah, those are 2 really good examples, man. The user switching to me that's part of my tech stack, period. Whenever I start a new site for a client, it's user switching's immediate. It goes in right away, because if I have to troubleshoot that site later for a user experience, for someone says, oh, I tried that, my password doesn't work, or that file doesn't pull up for me. If I can sign in as them and everything works, then I know it's not a site problem, it's a user problem, right? It's I don't know what their computer's set up for. I don't know what browser they're on. I don't, but if it works for me, I know it works. And then, so I take that out, and then I go, okay, so we're not having a site issue, we're having a user issue. And then I can start focusing that way in my troubleshooting. Yeah.
And there's another good LifterLMS Elementor integration called Liftor. It's free on the WordPress repo. Saeed Masri from our Facebook group made that one. So there's like multiple of those integrations.
I've used that one. There's one that comes on the demo sites that I never used personally until I started diving into our demo sites more, and that was the embed any document one.
Oh yeah,
that's a cool one, right? Because it's like, okay, so whatever document I want to display to my students, I can use the embed any document plugin. And it's free, right? So I can just throw that in there, and then anything I load to my media bin, I can embed with that plugin, and it displays well within the lesson.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Like if you want to have a PDF that displays within a lesson, I think WordPress might even support PDFs now, but there's other things it doesn't support, like PowerPoint. Yeah, PowerPoint's a big one for in the learning environment, right? And then a lot of people are doing those instead of PowerPoint, they're using Canva for presentations. And then so instead of embedding the Canva, you can download the file and then put the file in and use that to show it. Right. Yeah. I've been using Canva more and more. I used it twice today already, and I'll probably jump in there again later and make another video thumbnail. It's a super powerful editing tool. I'm trying to think of what else is really interesting to highlight with those. And I think we talk a lot about like there was an important point you mentioned about like AppSumo deals, and some of the businesses end up being around long term, and some of the businesses end up like going away after a year. And like you're particularly the kind of person who likes to experiment with new technology and try out new things and see what's happening and what people are putting together. But I am more of a like a lazy builder where like I get frustrated when my tool breaks, and I'm like so I care a lot about the long term stability of a tool. Like I don't want to dive into a project that like that's why like I'm using Elementor and Lifter integrations less. It's just because like Elementor is updating in pretty radical ways, and Lifter's making some updates, things like private site and all that kind of stuff. And then the integration partners have to manage both ends of these integrations, in addition to just managing WordPress itself updating. And so the and a lot of the companies that build these integrations also have other parts of their business that are more important parts of the business than
Yep.
the integration. And so it can be a little bit of like there are solid integrations like LifterLMS. The Tangible team does a good job with it. Like Aspen Grove Studios does a good job with the core scheduler with Lifter. But it's like there are, and I think Saeed Masri does a lot of Lifter Elementor work, so I think his integration is pretty good. But there's that big idea of how stable is this product likely to be in the next 5 years, and that's a big question for me because I don't want to rebuild my projects frequently because I'm gonna want to work on something else. So that's like another reason I try to keep things super simple.
Well, you and I seem to have that talk about keeping things simple on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You know, and it's one of those interesting things to me because, well, we just talked about it this morning. You know, Jason was on the podcast. It was so cool to have, you know, all of us there, kind of like, you know, it was weird because at first I was like, I don't know how this is really going to work out. Me and Jason on the same podcast. I mean, I work for the guy, but then it just worked out well. And he was talking. It was so cool to have someone from a developer perspective. He was like, well, you just have to understand that when you make something and then you have to constantly test it in a block, in a Elementor element, in a, you know, it's just in a short code, went through all the things. So it's like, it's one thing to make something and go, oh, that looks cool. But then it's like more than making it look cool. It's like, it's got to function in all of these different tech environments. You know, it's got to work in whatever people plug it into. And it's obvious that it takes a lot of work to figure that out. And the more we work as implementers to keep the simplicity at the top of our list, the more stable our sites and projects are going to be.
Right. And I've been working on organizing WordCamp Atlanta. We just released a YouTube video about that. And so that's organizing like bigger, that's an example of like a volunteer organization organizing a project around WordPress in a meetup in the Atlanta area. But these meetups happen all over the place. Me and Kurt next week are going to be at WordCamp US, which is in Maryland. And so just organizing, I'm working on organizing promotional content for this WordCamp, and I tried to schedule a podcast. We're booking on Calendly, and I got to get 3 people, myself as one of those people, in coordination on our schedules to appear on this podcast the same hour. And so just this single thing that doesn't have anything to do with building anything technical, just booking 3 people to be at the same place for an hour is really difficult. And so when we dive into things at a technical level, especially when we have like parts of the business that we can't necessarily control, like in WordPress, if you're not like a developer, you might not be able to control when a fatal error happens on your website. And you're like, what do I do? You're looking up a tutorial online. How do I go into the file manager and disable my plugins? How am I going to get in touch with this company for like support as to how do I figure out and fix this issue? There's almost like that layer that you can't necessarily access without hiring out like support for that. And so that's like the kind of issue you dive into when building things on a technical level. But even building things on an organizational level, there are big challenges, just like coordinating different people to be at a certain place at a certain time, but hopefully coordinating like putting in the effort to coordinate these things at a bigger business level is going to yield more results, because we'll be focused on going in a better direction instead of just diving into the tech area and figuring out what's possible and what we can put on our website. I don't know if that makes sense. It's like big abstract things and how they also apply to things at the technical level.
That didn't make any sense. I'm going to need you to re-elaborate on all of that.
But yeah, that's just a big thing to consider, because I think when we take a look at tech tools, or we see something on AppSumo, or see something in the Facebook group, or a podcast, or an integration, or something like that, we look at the features of like, what can this do? But there's a deeper importance of like, how does it do that? And like, who is this company that built this thing? And like that's a really important part of integrating, because if you were to integrate the tool into your website, or the plugin, or the theme, or the forms tool, or the live meeting tool, it is going to be like a fundamental part of how your business works. So understanding the company behind it, I think, is pretty important.
Yeah, I was just thinking about, so I answer some of the support tickets at Lifter, right? So I don't want people to think I am the support part, but I answer some of them. And I can just remember, like this week, I had someone say, "Oh, that was a bad answer," And it's like, so someone was like, "I'm thinking about using Lifter, but I want to do this, 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 and this, and I want to integrate that. I want this to be custom. And is this for us?" And I'm like, "It could very well be for you, but these are some of the tools that you might want to look at. In addition to Lifter, you probably want some of these tools, blah, blah, blah." And they're like, "So how does that work?" Right? It will show us how this works and show us how that works. And I'm like, "Well, you can go to this tutorial for this. You can go to this tutorial for that. You can And then one of the tools I recommended was one called Amelia, which is it's a pretty robust appointment scheduling program that has a payment gateway and all that stuff. And I was like, "Well, if this is what you really want to do, you probably want to look at this product." And then they were like, "Well, then we would have to buy that." And I'm like, "Yes, you would have to invest to buy that." And then that's when I got the, "We don't like your answer" thing. And then it was, "Well, what about this product, that product, or the other product?" And I was like, "I have never heard of those projects. I've never heard of those products." And that's unique, because it's like, look at what you and I do. Well, I mean, everyone just assumes that we have exposure or we have some knowledge about all of these things, and it's just not reality. I mean, there's 60,000 plugins in the repository. I can only really know about 50 of them.
Right. And oftentimes tools that are paid are better supported, maintained.
Yeah.
And like that's like with website hosting, that was a question at the beginning about like paying for like a budget website host that you can get like 3 years for $3 a month or whatever. You'll end up paying so much more in issues or your time, because on Saturday at 3 p.m. your site breaks, or on like you'd have to hire a web developer to come in and fix it. And I've had clients, because I used to offer a lot more freelance services, that would book me to like fix problems related to their website host. But then I would think to myself, and even tell them, if you were paying $30 a month, you wouldn't have had to pay me $200 to fix this problem right now. And so like ultimately they end up paying more because they're on a cheap host, but they have to have expensive support to fix the problems. And so that's where like hosting in general, like the $30 a month host from like WP Engine and stuff like that, is mostly in support money, because you could their WP Engine, I think they host on top of DigitalOcean. You have to verify that, but DigitalOcean is one of those like Amazon Web Services, DigitalOcean. These are like these big server farms. The companies that own those server farms, and they're actually the servers where your website's physically hosted. And then companies like WP Engine will rent space on those web hosts, and then they'll create the user interface and the domain connection interface and the support interface on top of those servers, and then provide that service to you. So you can just go to DigitalOcean directly and use shell commands and pay like, I don't know, $2 a month or whatever for like these servers, but then you'd have to configure them yourself to configure the WordPress mailer, configure the PHP support and like, so you can do that, but it's a lot of very, very technical work that's definitely above my head. as far as like hardware configuration. But then when you go to these companies that provide that more extensive support, they support WordPress exclusively, you end up in a place where you'll average get better support interactions, you'll average less issues, you'll average more uptime, you'll average better compatibility with the products you want to install on your WordPress, and you won't have to hire freelancers to come fix problems as often, or stress about fixing the problem or learning how to fix the problem yourself. So that cost is often, and this doesn't just apply to hosting, but also apply to other products, is usually in supporting those products, in creating a better product altogether, because the money supports the income and the focus of the people working on the product, and then that creates a better product, which then gets more people to adopt the product, and then more money comes in to support a growing team, and it just is like a cycle that works to grow things. But then there was Advanced Custom Fields was a popular one that had a lifetime license, and they had like a lower like profit per customer or whatever. They started to scale because Advanced Custom Fields started to get some real traction where you can create custom fields and custom post types in WordPress. And then they went to their lifetime customers and they're like, would you be willing to sign up for a yearly subscription? And it was like this weird interaction where like the business had operated on such a low margin that once they started to scale, they actually had an issue supporting the scaling and maintaining of the product. And so we don't have a lifetime deal at Lifter right now. That's a common question that comes up, is like, do you have any lifetime options or lifetime this or that? And we've done some campaigns in the past for lifetime, but they've been
very limited.
They've had adoption, but they've been very limited, and the purpose of that is to support the continued growth of the company and try to maintain a certain percentage of subscriptions that is lifetime subscriptions relative to other subscriptions, so that we can continue to grow the company, grow the product, create more value in the ecosystem. It's kind of long-winded, but that was just a spiel about like paid versus cheap or free products.
It's all right. It's all right. So what if you started talking and 4 people jumped off the live? Oh.
Yeah. Thanks for the great information you guys provide. The Q&A streams, you're awesome. Just got LifterLMS last night. That's awesome to hear. Lifter seems
that's right here. Stop it, right there. Nice. Boom, boom, boom. Raise the roof. She's in.
Nice.
I do like the culture of LifterLMS. Just to kind of echo what you're saying there, Leanne. I've been in the WordPress world for 19 years, and WordPress is only 20 years old, so I guess I got in pretty quick. And I didn't join any of the communities. I wasn't in the WordPress meetup world. I wasn't aware that any of that really existed, right? So I was just kind of struggling to move things around and figure things out on my own for the longest of times. And then I stumbled into LifterLMS, and I got invited to some of those mastermind calls that they host. And from there, it just blossomed. And now I'm on all these different podcasts and meetup groups and going to word camps and all that stuff. And I will tell you that it is so much more fulfilling jumping into the community than just, trying to eke out some products. But it was the culture at Lifter that kind of drug me in. I didn't see other companies doing live sessions like this, or the mastermind calls that we do on a weekly basis. Or even like the webinars that I saw Chris hosting for the longest time. I just didn't see other companies really coming out and doing that at scale, and it was really cool. So yeah, I was a customer long before I was someone that jumped on these shows with Will. And Will, you've been at it a long time. I mean, Lifter's been around for 8 years. You've been with Lifter for how long? 5 or 6?
Yeah, it would be 2016, I think, or 2017 when I started. So it's like 6 years, or maybe 7.
Yeah, and you're young, man. You've got such an advantage getting started so young.
Yeah, I think it might have been January of 2017 that I started. I'm trying to think. It was like January 1st of some year. Yeah, it was to, because I started with creating courses with Lifter, and they failed the projects. They didn't really fail. They're still like, the courses are still up. They just didn't create enough income to support me like working on those projects as a dedicated project. And so I learned the tool and then offered like freelancing services for entering content, basic content entry stuff, and then basic LifterLMS website building stuff. And then from there, just learned a bunch of tools, learned how the tools work, and now I'm learning the tools on a coding level, in addition to, running the customer success stuff here at Lifter. Coding is a really interesting level because I feel like I understand things a little bit more. Like, you know how URLs, you can embed a URL in your WordPress page and then it hyperlinks. In code, like in the end HTML, I don't know if anyone here's used HTML before. It says like yeah, and then there's the URL, and then there's the content that is linked up, which is oftentimes just the URL, but it's also linked up. It's hyperlinked with all blue and everything. That is what's going on in the code behind the scenes. But then if I wanted to like edit a link, I thought about it, like if you edit just the text of the link, the URL doesn't necessarily change. So there has to be support to say like this URL needs to match whatever's typed into the text of the URL. So it's like there's a method for identifying, is the text that is on the page a URL, and if so, use that as the link for that text. And that's like just such a low level, deep process, but the computer has to have some kind of method to read and think about that. And so just understanding the concepts a little bit on that deeper level help understand why certain things don't work, or why, like in the course builder, using the Heartbeat API to periodically send updates to the server based on what you're building in the course builder could cause certain issues to happen if the API tries to send a request, but it doesn't have a valid formatting for the request because a change was made during the period when, if you clicked, like, if the thing is trying to create the request and send the data to the server to tell the server what your course outline looks like, lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3, and then you add lesson 4 while it's trying to format that request, it's going to get confused and be like, I don't know how to format this, and it's going to have an error. And so there's like an error you can have in the LifterLMS course builder, but understanding that on a deeper level is really cool. And I don't know how to fix that yet, but understanding why the issue happens.
You can fix it by turning off the auto update.
Right. You could like manually be formatting these requests and sending them to the server. But like fundamentally, like what would need to happen in the code in order to not have that be a problem? It would have to be some kind of validation method probably, where you'd say like, does this request line up, or is there some kind of error in the request? If there's an error in the request, abort the process and try again. Like I don't think that exists. And so that might be sort of functionality that could be built in, but figuring out problem solving on the code level is a really interesting exploration that I'm going on.
Cool.
But we could wrap it up. Before we run out of time, is anyone coming to WordCamp US? I did see some customers in our help scan box mentioning that they'll be coming to WordCamp US. Me and Kurt will be in Maryland next week, WordCamp US. And Chris and Jason, Kim, and a bunch of other WordPress power users. So.
I think it'll be fun because as far as I know, we're just kind of milling around doing the social thing. Yeah. So, when we did WordCamp US in San Diego, we had to maintain the table and take shifts and all that kind of stuff. But now we're going to be able to be like, on 3, ready, 1, 2, 3, hit. And then we split and go and tear the place apart.
Right.
And I think there's a couple of talks I might want to go see too. But really looking forward to meeting and greeting some extra folks. Like Jason Cohen. I've now shared the screen with him 2 or 3 times on podcasts, but I've never shook his hand or met him in person, right? So that'd be cool to see him. And then Marcus Burnett, he started that new project with finding like where WordPress agencies are located. He's got that project online now. And, I've seen him in person a few times. I saw him in San Diego. I saw him in Phoenix, but it'll be good to see him again. And then Michelle Frechette, we've been exchanging things on Twitter and whatnot, or on X. And it'll be cool to see her again. I took a selfie picture with her last time, but I didn't get her permission. I took it from a distance for that competition she was having.
Oh, yeah.
She had a thing where for everyone that posted a selfie of her, somebody was making a donation. And so I got a picture of her at distance and posted the selfie. So there's always something fun going on. So if you have a chance to go, it'll be a cool thing to see you there.
Absolutely. I guess we'll wrap up the stream for today and hopefully see as many people as possible at WordCamp US.
Boom. I'm going to hit it.